Hey, man, this is Jack Downs again with your Class 8 lecture. I'm going to include in my email to you the study guide, some notes on an in-class exercise we did, which I want you to do and send to me, and other stuff too. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, I hope you're feeling better, and a reminder that I'm looking forward to seeing you in class on Tuesday. I won't be making video classes for much longer if you continue to be out. There really is an in-person class, but I really hope you're feeling better and you can jump back into the class on Tuesday. And of course, you should be looking at the schedule. What was due today was the advisor interview. I think there's a Moodle Dropbox. I'll check to be sure. And it says this is a change in the assignment. Not really. I said in the assignment you could hand it in person or in the Moodle Dropbox. You should be working on your entomology name presentation. I'll discuss that a little bit more in class today. And I believe you won't get to see it, but hopefully at least one of our TAs will give an example one. Have you done your rhetorical analysis paper yet? Of course, that's due in a little less than a month or so. What's due next class? Study Guide 1 is due. So the readings should now be complete for Study Guide 1, and you should be ready to hand in the on-paper study guide in class. Also, you should be reading Chapter 8, and I'm going to assign Study Guide 2. I will give it to you as an attachment, as a Word document. However, you may find that awkward. You could at least record the answers to some questions when you read Chapter 8. But I will make sure to get the on-paper one from me in class on Tuesday. So yeah, I'll give it to you as an attachment here, but don't feel like you have to print it. You can wait and get the on-paper one from me in class Tuesday. You'll have to remind me, but I should have it in class. It says work on practice entomology name presentation. Work on and practice that. Yes, and then it says work on a specific purpose statement exercise. I don't think I'm going to assign that yet. It is sitting there in Moodle if you want to take a look at it, but I think I'm going to wait and assign that on Tuesday because you have a lot going on right now. Then you will have a week to do it. That exercise where you have to research and write some real specific purpose statements, central theses, and listing of main ideas, and give sources too. Okay, so that's the schedule. Please stay on top of things and let me know how it's going. And let's move ahead on to what I was going to do in class. First I was going to talk briefly about the entomology naming presentation. One of the key things is I want to make sure you have some real structure in this. Look over the instructions and you will see it talks about at least 2 attention-getting devices to start off the introduction. So plan what those will be and practice them. Then you transition to an actual signposted preview statement. It will be very simple. I know just pretty much how it will go. It'll go something like this. First, we will talk about the history and or meaning of my name. Then, and I'm actually pointing my fingers as I do this, counting them off. Then we will discuss how I got my name and the family story behind it. Finally, we will review my own feelings about my name and how I think it fits me. Because those are your main ideas, right? So that will be your signposted preview statement. Then you will pause and move immediately into your main idea number 1, discuss it at some length. Main idea number 2, transition to main idea number 2, discuss it at some length. Transition to main idea number 3. You're using 4x6 index cards for this, only writing on one side, and not writing in full sentences except maybe for the introduction a little bit, and then mostly just keywords, right? Not reading it off the cards. And then you transition to main idea number 3, and then you have to build a conclusion. And you could probably return back to some of your attention-getting devices. You kind of repeat what your main ideas are again to make sure people really got them, but in different language, and ideally have some kind of a clincher at the end. So you need to build that out. Okay, so that's the entomology presentation again, and you can look at the instructions, which you should already have. All right, and now I want to go on to the lesson for today. First in class today, I'm going to be reviewing a little bit of what we did last time. And I just remember that we have a general purpose. And we're going to say in general, and as we begin here, we want them usually to be to inform. Then we have a specific purpose statement. And there's lots of things I went over last time you should review again about what makes a good SPS. And an example I gave in class last time was my SPS might be what would it be? Yeah. Threat to inform my audience. To inform my audience about 3 threats to salmon in the Salmon River. Good. And then if I was going to build a CT, and you need to be able to do this, essential thesis from that, essential thesis, kind of the SPS is what I'm trying to do. The essential thesis is how I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to say the essential thesis, which really brings all the main ideas together, would be salmon in the Salmon River are threatened by, and now I actually don't just say three things. I have to write them out. I'm actually, what I'm writing out here is what becomes my main ideas. Increasingly warm water, the parasitic lamprey, and lack of upstream spawning ground. Good. Okay, and if we do that, then our main ideas would be very simple. And of course, we usually do main idea, do Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, and 4 and 5. If that's how many we have. All right. Remember, we never do have. It has to be 2 to 5. So the first one will simply be, we'll simply write out the first threat is increasingly warm water. And then guess what? The second is the parasitic lamprey. And then the third threat is lack of now. And the reason I really took the time to write those all out like that is to show you that that's really what you have to do, all that repetition. Sometimes people in their SPS exercise, or later when you're really writing SPS for a real presentation, or on the study guide in the future, number 2, or the or exams, might just sort of like scribble in like and then repeat and then repeat. No. I really want you to write it all out like this. And now you can see how we get to our signposted preview statement, right? That transition is very, makes a lot of sense. And I don't have my signposted preview statement thing in front of me, so I'm going to go get it because I wanted to review one more thing in it that I didn't go into great detail with before. Structuring presentation information, here it is. And yes, we've gone over now the general purpose, the specific purpose, and how we analyze them. The central thesis, we just did one of those. It has to provide all the information I want my audience to remember. All the main ideas retrieved from my central thesis that I write out the main ideas. They need to be complete sentences. They need to be signposted, numbered essentially. They should be the same language. They should have Roman numerals. There should be 2 to 5 of them. And they shouldn't be transitions. They are main ideas, not transitions. Then when you give your presentation, each one of those main ideas will have sub-ideas. And then research that goes in with them, maybe a certain number of sources for each main idea. And then of course all the detail you're going to say too. So lots of keywords and things you'll put in there. But when we just write out main ideas, we just write them out as the Roman numerals, and that's all we write. The signposted preview statement, remember, this applies to your entomology presentation too. Does it include all the main ideas? Yes, it should. It should be signposted. We say first, second, initially, finally, things like that. And it's not a good idea to actually use your fingers and count them off when you say them. It should use we language. Remember, we should be associating this with the audience at all times. So we say, we will discuss, we will talk. And we change those descriptors. Don't just say, first we will talk, then we will talk, then we will talk. Find some other ones like describe, reflect, consider, explore, so on. So you need to vary those a little bit. You don't vary the language or change the language when you write out main ideas with Roman numerals, but when you create your signpost or preview statement that you actually say, then you vary the language. It should be delivered at a slower rate. It's really useful. You're giving people a map of your presentation, so it's really useful to slow down a little bit, make sure it's clear, and then it should immediately proceed as you begin the body. You do those, then you say, and first, then you just say, then you just move right into the first main idea. So if your first main idea is the history of your name, you'll say, I discovered and you might give a source and so on. And then does the order of the main ideas match the way they're used in the body of the speech? In other words, that 1, 2, 3 order should be the same in your signpost or preview statement. It should be the same order as the main ideas appear in your presentation. One more thing about the entomology presentation I just want to make sure you're as clear on is that you also have to make sure you give sources when you're actually speaking your main ideas, right? I want at least 2 sources for the history / meaning of. And when you say the source, which is probably a website, it might be the Downs Family Wikipedia site, or it could be the behindthename.com or something. Try to give some other information too, like when was it written, who was the author. Try to give some qualifying information of the source. So I actually need to speak the source with the information, and hopefully you have at least 2. Then there's also, when you do your interview, you need to do an interview for your the second main idea, right? The how you got your name. You have to use that as a source too. That source is just going to be, the relative you talk to or something like that. But you give their name and explain their relationship to you. Okay, so that's signpost to preview statements and how they relate to this. Good. So I've gone over that, and I did it in terms of this. All right. So now we want to talk about the how we can further categorize and further break up this SPS and CT, and therefore the main ideas also. So now we're really analyzing the information and trying to put it into different categories or pigeonholes. This all comes from a handout which you have available to you on Moodle, which I will try to remember to attach to the email I send you, and it looks like this, not this. Where did I put it? Here it is. It's called Types of Informative Speeches and Matching Organizational Patterns. I know that sounds deadly dull, but what it really means is we can take that SPS and we can say, is it an object SPS? Is it a process SPS? Is it an event SPS? Is it a concept SPS? And we can take the CT, the central thesis, and we say, which of these organizational patterns does it fall into? So we label it as object, process, event, concept, and you can remember those sometimes with the word COPE, C-O-P-E, which stands for concept, object, process, event. Now, why didn't I write them that way before? When I put the list, I probably could have, but object is the most common one. So I guess that's the way I wrote it. So you could remember COPE. That's a label for your SPS. And then your CT has a organizational pattern. So let's first look at those labels. An object is something that is a thing, a person, a place. So you're not talking about the idea, you're not talking about the process, you're not talking about the happening, you're talking about the thing. That's an object SPS. It's one main object, right? Good. What's a process SPS? It explains how something works or how something happens. It usually involves steps that happen, usually in an order too. So it's not just any old things, broken down in any old pattern of things. It's broken down in steps that proceed in an order, like a recipe would. Okay. How about an event? This is about happenings in the past, present, or future, usually the end result of a series of actions. It can be complicated to make these distinctions between all of these, but I think people have the most problems between process and event. Be careful when discussing event speeches because they often center on problems, which likely makes them persuasive. So events, they could be like historical events. That's usually pretty easy to figure out. But there can be other things that are based on a something that happened and has a result. Okay, and sometimes those things are problems. And if you're discussing an event-based sort of thing, which is a problem, be careful you're not doing persuasion. And concepts are usually pretty easy to keep distinct. They're theories, or philosophies, or principles. They're ideas. Okay, so I'll give you some examples in a minute. Then your CT should fall into one of these organizational patterns. So we label the SPS, and then we also assign one of these to the central thesis. Is it topical? This is like, how do we break down the information? It's really the main ideas. So it applies to the CT and the main ideas. In other words, for topical, it's just breaking it up into topics. Okay, it's just this one, this one, this one. You just take the information, it's just broken up into topics. The topics don't go in any certain order. All right, they're just subtopics to the main idea, to the main ideas, right? The overall main idea. They're balanced, so they should be about the same amount of information in each one. This is the most common one. Chronological CTs are based on things that go in order, in time, like, for instance, the way steps in a process might go, or like some things in history might go. You're discussing things in order over time, and they have to go in that order, right? Causal means that one thing causes another. We make a cause and effect relationship. Main ideas are often causes or main effects. We might present long-term or short-term effects and causes. This one can be a little hard to keep distinct from the other ones. All right. And then spatial, which is the least common, but is usually pretty easy to keep distinct, is when we talk about things in space. So we talk about the parts of something, not the parts of them in order in a process, but the parts of them, the physical parts of the thing, right? So we break it down to the top, bottom, inside out, and stuff like that. And then it says, is there a fifth one? Problem solution, problem cause, analysis solution, comparative advantage. No, those are all persuasive types of persuasive patterns, organizational patterns. So they would not be appropriate for informational speeches. So we are doing informative presentations, informative general purpose, not persuasive. Then we can also realize that that concept labels can only be topical. So concepts can only be topical organizational patterns. But objects can be topical, chronological, or spatial. The process could be topical or chronological, and events could be topical, chronological, but they are the only ones that could be causal. So if you determine that it's a causal organizational pattern, it's going to have to have been an event label on the SPS. This will make a little more sense, perhaps, if I give you some examples. And let's go ahead and go back to the examples. And I'm going to give you some new examples too, okay, right? Let's see. Let's look at this first one I have here. To inform my audience about 3 threats to salmon in the Sanic River. So is that, again, we're looking at the choices that we had back in the handout. Is that going to be a concept, an object, a process, or an event? Well, it's about a thing we could hold in our hands. It's about the object. It's about the salmon. The salmon is an object. Okay? So that's pretty simple, straightforward. You can see how you determine that's an object, SPS. Now, how do we label the CT? They're threatened by these 1, 2, 3 things. Okay. Increasingly warm water, parasitic lamprey, and lack of upstream spawning ground. Is that a cause and effect? Not really. Yeah, they are things that threaten, but they don't cause. We're not talking about and the extinction of the salmon or something, which would be the effect, and these could be a cause. No, we're just naming them. Do they have to go in a certain order? No, they do not. So these are topical. This is a topical organizational pattern, which is the most common one, right? For the organizational patterns. And we can also see that when we look at the main ideas. So actually object topical is the most common label in organizational pattern. And it's the one that this one happens to be. But now let's look at some other ones, okay? And you should probably refer back to your handout as we go. How about, to inform my audience, so let's do a new one here, about the 3 main characteristics of, that's not how you spell characteristics, is it? Thank you, word. Demo. Socialism as expressed. It's not how you spell socialism either. By Bernie Sanders. Okay, that'll be the SPS, right? I should probably label it like that too. And what would the CT be? I don't really have a CT exactly for this, but you can imagine it would say democratic socialism as expressed by Bernie Sanders. The first characteristic of democratic socialism as expressed by Bernie Sanders is to redistribute wealth through social programs or something like that. And the second one is something else. The third one is something else. Okay. What is that? What is the SPS? How do we label it? Is it concept, object, process, event? Democratic socialism is an idea. It's definitely a concept. Okay? All right. What is the central thesis? I didn't write it out, but it was something like the first main characteristic of democratic socialism, as expressed by Bernie Sanders, is to redistribute wealth through social programs. Second, as expressed by Bernie Sanders, is to ensure health care for all, and so on. So these are not things that are chronological. They'll have to go in a certain order or something. These are just things, just broken up into topics. Something's just broken up into a topic, it's topical. So that would be concept topical. How about the next one? Let me just bring that out here so not to retype so much. And I'm going to say, to inform my audience, this one is going to be about the 3 stages in the life cycle of the Atlantic salmon. Okay, stages in the life cycle. And what would it be? The first stage in the life cycle of the Atlantic salmon is the egg stage. Next stage is the fingerling stage. Next stage is the adult stage, or something like that. Okay? I don't actually know what the life stages are. There's probably more than that, but you get the idea, right? Okay. So again, how do we label the SPS? Is it concept, object, process, event? It's the salmon again. It's the thing. It's an object. Okay. You could say, because you're talking about the life cycle of the salmon, it is a process. I say it's an object. It's still about the salmon. That's the key thing. But if you want to say, because it's focusing on the life cycle, and life cycle is a process that has steps in it, that would be okay also. I think you could go either way. Sometimes there's a little bit of judgment call. It kind of depends on how you're actually going to do it. However, I don't think there's any problem with saying that the CT is going to be chronological. First this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So it's either object chronological or it's process chronological. I don't know. Which one do you think? Well, we could argue about it. Then how about to inform my audience about what? 3 main activities they will find at the Battle of Plattsburgh. Okay, the Battle of Plattsburgh celebration. Is it a thing? Not exactly. It's not exactly an object. So I don't think this is an object. Okay. Is it a concept? Oh, I don't think so. Concept, object. Is it a process? It's a festival. A festival isn't so much a process. I suppose there's some things that happen before others, but it kind of depends on. We're just talking about 3 main activities, not necessarily beginning, middle, and end, right? No, I think it's an event. I think the Battle of Plattsburgh celebration is an event. And then how am I going to describe these things? I'm going to say the first main activity of the Battle of Plattsburgh celebration is the gathering of historic reenactors. The second main activity at the Battle of Plattsburgh celebration is the educational booths about local history. The third main, and so on, right? Now, these are not things that have to happen in a certain order. It's not like first we do this, then we do this. These are just breaking it down into what? I'm going to tell you where these things are. Okay, so you could say it's topical, but more than that, I'm going to say the historical reenactors which gather at the Kent Lord House about the City Hall Place educational events. Now I'm actually like drawing a map. I would say that becomes spatial, event spatial. And finally, for today, let's do one last one to inform my audience about the 3 steps required to change the oil in your car. I'm not going to write this now. 3 steps to required to change the oil in your car. And then I'm going to say the first step to change the oil in your car is to remove the oil pan screw. Second, actually, the first step is probably to find an oil receptacle and to get it ready and place it underneath the oil pan. Second one is to find a wrench and da-da-da-da-da. The third one is to remove the oil filter and drain it carefully, and then to replace it with a new one. And then the fourth step is to replace it with a new one, and so on. There's probably going to be 5 steps, and then replace the screw and refill the oil, or something like that. You could argue that might be a little trivial, but I guess you could find enough to say, and there's enough actually mistakes you could make that would work out. There's enough advice you could give from a mechanic, perhaps. So, what are these? These are steps in a process, right? Steps to require to change oil in your car. And then these things have to be done in order, in a chronology. So it's process chronology. Okay, the last thing in today's class I'm going to do is then I'm going to give people a handout. And it's going to look something like, I actually have it here. No, I did not. Oh, by the way, this is what the study guide looks like. I will be sending you the Word document. I didn't have it there. I had it someplace else. Here it is. It's going to be called Practicing Effective Specific Purpose Statements. I'm going to divide the class up into small groups of like 2 or 3 and have them look at these SPSs, determine what's wrong with them, try to rewrite a new one, all right, and then use both a SPS and a CT, and which we'll say has the main ideas. Yeah, I can actually list the main ideas. And then ideally, also try to label the SPS, and give an organizational pattern for the central thesis. So I'm going to go have groups do it. And if we have time, I will ask them to write one on the board or something like that, and then we'll try to go over it. Or maybe we'll just have to speak them out in class. So I'm going to send this to you in the body of the email, and I want you to try to do that for these. I want you to fix them, see what's wrong, fix them, and then it doesn't say that here, but I want you to also try to label the SPS and give an organizational pattern for the CT of your ones you fixed and changed. And you don't have to write out main ideas because they should be within the CT. Okay, a big class, lots of information, and good luck to you, and I will see you in class hopefully on Tuesday.